only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Bill Baker, and this is the Georgia Independent School Association webinar. It's part of the Crisis Coach webinar series of the 2017 series. Glad that you could join us today. Today we're going to be discussing benchmarking preparedness. How do we know if we're ready? Our presenter is going to be Karen Masullo, who's our Executive Vice President here at Firestorm. We'd also like you to become our friend on Facebook, Firestorm Solutions. You can follow us on Twitter, Firestorm Soul. Yes, there is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequences. We do want to remind you that the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. And the work product provided by Firestorm should be read in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. Today's webinar series, and we're proud to have them do it, is underwritten by the Georgia Independent School Association. They've been our host and sponsor on this for several years now, and we're delighted to have them. Jeff Jackson, the president, is out working with clients today, but he wanted us to say nice things about the Georgia Independent School Association. We're pleased to work with them. They do a wonderful job. Our presenter is Karen Masullo. Karen is our Executive Vice President. She also has extensive experience in social media monitoring, training, preparing reports, analyzing situations, responding to emergencies. Karen, over to you, please.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. We are very happy to start this new year with our friends at the Georgia Independent Schools Association. We just were chatting with some friends of ours from the Rochester, New York area, and I have to say I believe you are very grateful to be living in Georgia and not Rochester at this particular point in time. Jim Satterfield may join us today. He is working on a project in the mountains of beautiful North Carolina, and if he's able to join us, he will. But he did want me to say Happy New Year and thank you to everyone at the Georgia Independent Schools Association for the wonderful relationship we've enjoyed with you now for many years. This is the first of 12 sessions that we will be working through this year, and we thought it was a great idea to start at the beginning, at benchmarking our preparedness, trying to figure out where our gaps are so that we can lay out a plan for the rest of the year to keep our students and our teachers and our schools and communities safer. If you have any questions throughout the session, you can use the GoToWebinar dashboard chat area. I believe it's on the right-hand side of your screen. It may be different the way you have it set up, but if you open that up, there's a little chat area. You can ask a question. If we have time, we'll certainly get to it in the session. If not, we will follow up. You can also email us at webinars@firestorm.com, and you can visit our website and use our contact form. There will be a brief from today's session that will be uploaded to our website sometime tomorrow, and it will cover the salient points of our conversation and some of the graphics for you so that you can get your team started in benchmarking preparedness at your school so that you know if you're ready. So we're going to start off. It's the first of the year. We've made all kinds of resolutions for ourselves. We might be losing weight. I used my treadmill 3 times yesterday. I was very proud of myself for a long time, not just for 2 minutes. So doing that with our teams and our our business continuity plans is a really important part of starting off the new year right. We have to be objective and honest with ourselves and say, okay, where are our gaps? How can we fill those gaps? And how can we anticipate the next problem that may occur? You don't have to be a futurist to know what may be coming down the road. You have to ask yourself the question, if such and such happened, would we be ready? Are we sure we'd be ready? And how do we know? You can identify your organization's next crisis, and we can help you do that by sitting down and going through a variety of challenges that may occur, and step by step creating a roadmap to hitting the right target, and then measuring our preparedness to meet those challenges. So let's get started at a very high level. We're thinking of our schools. There is an expectation of management of risks. We know that. You have a responsibility to keep my child safe in your facility. If I am a teacher, you have a responsibility to keep me safe. You have a responsibility to keep yourself safe. How are you going to do that? Are you sure you know? And how do you know? We must give objective assurance to our board and the management that we have clear, well-defined risk management processes in our schools. We need to assure that our risks have been correctly evaluated. We need to make sure that we have a way to evaluate those risks and then report those key risks in a transparent way that assures we are not siloing the information. We need to review our control processes for these risks. Is our system of internal controls operating effectively? And do we have good oversight for monitoring all of these risks? So at a very high level, I want you to get together with your teams or your team or your person, however large or small your organization may be, the questions don't change, and sit down and start at this high level. The very first question, are our kids safe? If the answer is yes, are you sure? How do you know? And then start walking through the various threats that there could be, whether man-made or natural disaster, that could affect your brand, your reputation, your property, and your people. Now, the next question we have to ask to our teams is, how are we going to measure whether we're prepared, and why are we going to measure? You know, for any schools or campuses continuity program, we want to ensure that you give continued service to your students, support to your teachers, communication with your community, police, fire, other officials, even when you're threatened by natural or man-made crisis situation. There are a lot of moving pieces, however, that have to work together to ensure that success under highly stressful circumstances. But ultimately, the question everyone is going to ask is, can our school survive this major disruption without overall harm to our brand, our reputation, and certainly our people? So can you categorically state to parents, to teachers, to staff, and to your board, yes, we can. We can take care of anything that comes our way. So let's think it through. Can your organization survive a disruption or a crisis? Now, in Firestorm, we have a hazard matrix, and we have a guarded, elevated, and severe levels of incidents. So we look at something from guarded. Someone hacks into our system and our website, and for a very temporary period of time, there's something objectionable on the screen of our website, but we get our server back pretty quickly. We take care of it. We figure out what happened. We manage it, and we move on. So it's a little bit of a rough patch, but we managed it. We moved on, and we've taken taken precautions to assure it doesn't happen again. How about a severe disruption? How about when we get into the really severe part of it? How about Joplin, Missouri, when a tornado came through and destroyed the entire town? Not only the schools, the hospitals, everything. Can we rebuild after that? Can we survive that? Have we thought it through? In Georgia, we have a variety of interesting weather events that could occur. Are you ready? How do you know? Have you tested it? Where does the organization stand today as a school? Are you unified? Are your teachers wearing many hats or too many hats? Is your board or your senior level administration involved, open? Do they have a plan? You know, it's great if you on the campus level, if you at your school, whether your school has 80 students or 8,000 students, it's great if in your facility, in your building, you're ready. Anything from a fire to an act of violence, you're ready. But your board may have situations that occur that don't align at all to your school. They may be attacked on social media. They may engage on social media in ways that are negative to your school because they're not following your program or your plan. So how well have you communicated with the board? And how does the board understand that it's all a part of the clear continuity of education that we're trying to achieve? How are you going to assess what your program needs to improve upon? How are you objectively going to do that SWOT analysis so that you understand your strengths and weaknesses and what you're going to do to improve those? One of the great things to look at is look at 2016. Sit down with your team and say, these were all of the initiatives that we had in 2016. This is where we are in those initiatives. This one was supposed to take 18 months. We're on track. We're on budget. Here's another project. It was supposed to take 6 months. We're now in our 11th month. We're having problems. What are those problems about? How can we mitigate those so they don't happen again? Have you had turnover in staff? Did the people who are no longer with your organization have specific responsibilities related to crisis response and school continuity, and we have not replaced those tasks or projects with new people? Do your plans follow best practices? And we're going to talk to you about what those are, and we can help you with what is best practice. What should be your priorities? We know that keeping our students safe is the #1 priority. Giving them a great education and keeping them safe from harm. We know that's our #1 priority, and it's a huge priority. But what else do we need to consider? Where are the gaps? And are your suppliers and vendors prepared? Are your suppliers prepared? If there were a situation and suddenly there was a shortage of or an interruption in transportation and nobody could get to your facility, how would you feed your students? How would you get medical supplies? All of those different things that arrive. If there are strangers on your campus or in your building, are they one-time strangers or are they transient strangers? People we actually know. They're not complete strangers. They're visitors. Should they be made aware of any plans or programs or protocols that we have in place? So in order to do this the right way, we simply have to say, you know, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere else. Without the right measurements and the right roadmap, you're never going to know not only where you're going, but where you want to be. This is absolutely true of the goals set for your program. Hitting the right target is going to be a product of first understanding and setting the right goals, and then establishing the right measurements and roadmap to know when you're on target. And the more complicated a trip that you're about to take, the better and more comprehensive your roadmap's got to be. So perhaps the destination you need to get to is far away from this place that you're starting from, or it's a place you've never ever been before. And you're going to take a route you never anticipated. Maybe you're not used to driving in the mountains or through the desert. Now you will. It takes a different level of preparation, a different combination or type of preparation. Expectations are high that you get where you're going, and maybe your time is short. So if you set the right destination and then seek input from expert sources, set mile markers along the way that measure your progress, it's going to greatly increase your chances of arriving at that dream vacation spot or a national monument that you've never seen or never been to before. So we need a clear starting point. We need to understand the distance between points in between. We need to know our best route and then have many alternate routes created in case there's construction or there's some other situation that we didn't cause that suddenly is going to hold us up. How many times have any of us been on a trip and there's been an accident and we sat in traffic for 4 or 5 hours just waiting to move forward 10 feet? Well, think about that with your programs and your plans. How many times have you started something only to have maybe budget constraints realigned so that your project's not funded any longer? Or a crisis does occur which pulls resources in a different direction. So we have to have backup plans to our plans to assure that we can continue to move forward, make progress, and then be able to measure it. So what should you measure? So we look at your goals, look at where you are today with your program, and then let's talk about some different ways that we can go about demonstrating preparedness. First of all, are there clear roles and responsibilities in your organization? Now, depending on the size of your team, you may wear all of the hats. Now, hopefully you have a few other people who can take some of that responsibility. And you can adjust your timeline accordingly if you have more people in which to disperse various responsibilities. But those responsibilities must be clear, and they must talk about not only what to do in a crisis, but how we're going to do it. I want to invite everyone to join us, and please tell other people in your organizations and in your association who might not have been on the call today. Last year, Firestorm did 6 virtual stress tests because sitting your whole teams down at a table for a 2 or 3 day tabletop exercise is not always feasible. It can be require extended resources, and it's hard to find the time to get people together to really go through a crisis scenario. So Firestorm developed 2-hour virtual stress tests last year. We had 6 of them, and they're highly effective. And we've had more than 1,000 organizations join us at any given time. As a matter of fact, a couple of our Georgia independent schools sent us pictures of their teams around conference tables, working through the scenario. It was great, and we appreciate it and look for more. We're going to have our first one of 2017 on February 2nd from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern. You can find it on our website, firestorm.com/events, February 2nd. And what we're going to be talking about is a disruption or a crisis that is caused by instances of live streaming that may affect your school's brand or reputation. Recently in Chicago, we saw this sadly in real time. 4 young people were arrested for beating a developmentally disabled young man and live streaming it on Facebook. So these live streaming applications are high-risk applications for your students and your teachers. Recently had a situation where we had a school where we actually had teachers enjoying illegal drugs and alcoholic beverages with a student and that. And I know that you're sitting there on the phones, all of you saying, this could never happen in my school. And I know that the school that it happened to is saying the same thing. So remember, every time we think that people would never do anything that's stupid, they will do something a little more stupid than we anticipated. So we're going to do a 2-hour stress test on that type of scenario. It's going to involve sexting, cyberbullying, cyber stalking, but very specifically focus on some of the applications like Meerkat, YouNow, Periscope, and Facebook live streaming and Snapchat live streaming so that you can get a better grasp on what you might need to think about around that. Sorry for the plug, but I just want to make sure everybody knows we're going to be doing that. So through that, we're also going to talk about whether you're aligned to best practices and what those best practices are. And I want you to go to the newest person on your team, in your school, on your staff, one of your teachers, one of your teacher's assistants, and I want you to sit down with that person and say, okay, let's think about a tornado coming through, and part of the building is damaged. We have kids in the parking lot. It's toward the end of the school day. What do we do next? And see how they respond. See what their first answer is. See if they know where the plan is, what they do, what their role is. If they start guessing, then we've missed the mark. We need an training day. Bring your folks in and let's review the plan again. Because if your newest hire isn't able to assume control in a crisis, then you've missed the mark. Then we can establish a team of at least 3 of your folks to read through your current plan. Now remember, because you are a Georgia Independent Schools member, Georgia Independent Schools is underwriting no-fee assessment with Firestorm. You can call us at any time and schedule an appointment to do a 1-hour joint high-level risk assessment, and it's based on a sort of a 1-hour interview. It's not in-depth, it's not every part of your program, but it's a high-level assessment that's based on best practices. And it is a proprietary tool that we use. No fee to you, so go ahead and do that to get started. And then when we say, how did you identify risks, at a very high level, we can see where we know you need room for improvement. So if we know your windows are vulnerable, if we know the locks on your doors are a problem, at least we can start somewhere. Have you had a security assessment, a physical security assessment? How are you currently monitoring for each threat or risk in your organization? Do the students, teachers, and parents know about the plan? And I would go one step farther with that. Have you reached out not only physically, maybe not only your head of school's gone over and shaken the hand, but through social media, are you connected to your local fire, law, security, city officials? So if something is going on, are you connected directly to your mayor, their social media, so they can help you with crisis messaging? Also, I'd just like to make an aside and say, remember, in every situation that Firestorm has seen over the last 5 or 6 years where there's been a crisis at a school, no matter the size, the school's website has immediately crashed because everyone, including media, has suddenly hit that website that normally doesn't get much traffic at all, and suddenly gets 1 million people hitting on it, crashes the server, and then people who really need to get to the information can't get to the information at all. So you must have alternative forms of notification. Your internal notification system, your external notification system, and your backup notification systems. And social media is a great way to leverage those things. So maybe one of the first things that you do on your list, if you don't have a Facebook account, if you don't have a Twitter account, if you don't have someone identified to do those kinds of things for you, maybe you can start a strategy or plan, at least for in a crisis, so that you can leverage those tools. Does every component that you have in this plan, is it tested at the very least annually? Now, every single part of your plan, maybe that doesn't have to be tested, but there certainly are parts and pieces that change with various things. They change with the political climate. They change with maybe a change in your board. Maybe you have new elections that occur, and priorities change in that way. So we have to look at those kinds of situations. Maybe there are new laws, new rules and regulations that you are out of compliance with when they change, and so those have to be reviewed more than annually. And does every activation or exercise that you do have a hot wash afterward? What we mean by that is it's great to test your plan. We love it when you do. But then everyone who's been a part of that testing must come together and say, how did we do? Where are our weaknesses? We have Jane Doe in charge of XYZ, and we realize Jane Doe is a better fit for ABC. So we're going to switch Jane Doe out of that role so that in a real crisis, we don't set Jane Doe up to fail. We set her up to succeed and help us keep our students, our teachers, our parents, and our visitors safer. These are some of the bits and pieces that are included in one part of this. This would be the physical side assessment for a school system in another country. And one of their buildings, the way we did the site assessment was we did it virtually with some of the live streaming apps that I've talked to you about, so they have really great uses too. And in that, we noticed a vulnerability, and we asked the school administration what they were going to do about the apartment building right next to one of their campus buildings that had a balcony that it overhung in such a way to their rooftop that someone could feasibly jump about 6 feet from that balcony down onto the roof of the school. And they said, there's no balcony over our roof. And we said, yeah, there is. We saw it. We need you to look at that. So they went outside and they looked up and they said, fancy that. There's a balcony over our roof. So we were able to identify that there was a vulnerability that they hadn't even noticed because they saw it every day. And it just became part of their subconscious that it was just there. So we're going to point out those kinds of things and help you move forward on access control, building exteriors, key systems, monitoring of that, your sight lines, what surveillance, And we all have different properties in different places, whether you back up against a mall or you're out in the middle of a beautiful wilderness area. We all have different risks that must be brought into play, into consideration. And we have to think about your communication systems, again, both internally and externally, your public address systems, notification systems. What's your information technology risks? Are you running any risk in your social media monitoring? Right now, anyone on the phone right now, if you had to put out an emergency crisis message on your Twitter account or on your Facebook account, do you have any idea how you would do that? Do you have any idea who in your organization would be the one to do that? If that person were unavailable due to being away, out of the country, ill, in the hospital, unable to respond, would you have the usernames and passwords in order to gain access? I manage a great deal of Firestorm social media, and I do make sure that key senior people within the company have access to those tools, because we are 3 deep. We try to be 3 deep and have backups to our backups. Have you looked at your loading dock areas? Can people just tailgate behind someone else to gain access to your building? If somebody's walking in with a dolly with cans of food on it for your cafeteria, can I just follow in behind that person looking official like I'm with them, and will I be questioned? Have you looked at your lighting, your parking, your perimeter barriers and controls, your alarm systems? You know, every time we've seen an instance recently in school systems, collegiate organizations, that we've seen acts of violence, have you seen on social media all of the students posting how they have been trying to come up with innovative ways to lock themselves in because the doors don't lock from the inside, so they can't protect themselves and shelter in place? We've seen people piling desks on doors. We've seen people using their belts to secure doors. How does that work in your organization, and what's the answer? Have you reviewed previous security breaches and incidents to document patterns or trends? You know, one of the key things Firestorm is really strong on, especially in our Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment Program, or BRTHA, is that we want to see information unsiloed. If one of your resource officers on your property has an incident with a student and writes that up, where does that go? So that if someone else, a student, a teacher, a parent, a vendor, has an incident with that same student, will that information go into the same system, or will it go in 2 disparate places so that you can never spot the trend? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be forecasters, and the only way you can be a forecaster of crisis is if you understand the trend that is evolving. School, for security personnel, your school resource officers, are they yours? Are they contracted? Are they off-duty folks? Are they part-time? Are they volunteers? How have they been trained? Are they trained on your program? Or are they following their own program that has nothing to do with your program? If they're contracted, are they vested only in what that company's program is, has nothing to do with your specific approach? Are your security policies and procedures well defined? Clear management plan, clear emergency management plan, your school violence protection, all of the violence potential plans obviously are very complex and very important. Have you reviewed your security sensitive areas and signage? You know, we have an instance with a very large facility that it was a mall that had a movie theater located within it, and a young woman and her friend had fallen asleep in the movie theater, and when the movie ended, they had gone to the midnight show. Well, they woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning alone in a movie theater. They were able to leave the movie area through an exit door that brought them into an area of the mall, but they couldn't get out of the mall. So they tweeted, "Help, we're stuck at the XYZ mall and we can't get out." And we did pass some custodial workers, but they didn't speak English and they just laughed at us. Well, this was a problem for the facility on many, many areas. First, the young ladies were not locked in. They could get out, but they didn't know where or how because the signage was so weak it didn't direct them into how. There were issues with language, signage, and response, and security. So we need to look at things like that. We need to look at those kinds of crazy situations and understand what might our response to that will be. And then once we've measured what our response will be and started testing it, what will we measure that against? So where and how is your plan going to address the actual framework, the whole program framework, how you're going to do the risk assessment, and what is best practice in that regard? Do you understand clearly behaviors of concern, and are you monitoring for that? And this is one area specifically that I like to focus on because I have a team that's all they do all day for schools and businesses. We monitor very specifically for behaviors or threats of concern, not in any private way, but only through open source, publicly accessible conversations and statements on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And we let people know, so-and-so says they're bringing a gun to school today. We think you should intervene. I know if you asked any parent of any child in your school, if you knew you could stop a gun from walking in your school, would you? Should you? They would say yes, you should. So when we look at the measurement process, we're going to try to keep it as simple as possible. And each component should be evaluated for its completeness as compared to best practices. And then we assign a rating. So let's keep a really simple rating process. And we show you another rating process as we go through this because there is no just one rating process, whatever's simplest and easiest for you. So we start with green D, documented. It's well documented, aligns with best practices. Great. Next component, as we look at it, it's verbally in place. So we've talked about it, we've discussed it, we're ready to document it. We know what we're doing around it, but we need documentation. So that's verbally in place. I is incomplete. We've got sort of a little bit of an idea of what we're supposed to do around this, but we're not really quite sure. If an incident actually happened, I can picture people running around, you know, freaking out. If in your brain you envision people running around freaking out, then it's incomplete and needs improvement, or it's not in place at all, and you're setting your people up for failure because there's no evidence found in your program that components of your plan are in alignment with best practices. Your procedures must be actionable. One of the things that Jim Satterfield says all of the time when we work with having an active engagement with a school, when we do our own hot wash of the event, invariably we say they had a where but they didn't have a how, which means that people knew there was a plan somewhere, but they didn't know how to enact the specific pieces and parts for the situation they were encountering. Plans must be actionable and follow best practices. Here's an example, the standard response protocol. That's based not on an individual scenario, so it's not scenario-based planning, it's impact-based planning. It's based on the response to any given scenario. There are 4 specific actions that can be performed during an incident, any incident: lockout, lockdown, evacuate, or shelter. So the SRP differentiates between lockdown, which are interior doors only, and lockout, which are exterior doors only, whereas the majority of existing plans don't make that distinction. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about best practice. We really want to talk about a high-level protocol like this used in approximately 5,000 schools around the country. You can look up more of this at iloveyouguys.org. Here's another coding that you might use. So we have undocumented, incomplete, needs revision, or verbal only. So whatever works for you again. And then we need to look within that plan at the individual components. Have you looked at your board policy? Is it complete? Where is it kept? Have we trained on it with the board? Have we tested it with the board? Have we looked at emergency response? We have a situation where a parent recently in one of our schools had a heart attack when dropping their child off to the parking lot in the school. How complete is the response to that incident? Where is any mention or planning of this kept? And have we trained on how to respond and who responds? Do we have a clue? How do we communicate internally with each other when a crisis like that happens? How does whoever is witnessing the incident let you, the person today on this call, know that an incident is occurring? Have we trained on this and have we tested it? How about background checks? Are we just doing them at time of hiring? Are we doing them once a year or more often? Are we hooked into a system that alerts us if any of our current employees become involved in an arrest for an illegal activity through our county or elsewhere? What is our communication protocol when someone is released for cause? Are we monitoring Facebook and Twitter to see if our former disgruntled employee is now taking their case to social media? No matter how inane an activity may be that gets someone released from their position, they are going to go to social media and position it in the way they want to. Doesn't mean you have to respond, doesn't mean it's going to be an issue, but occasionally it blows up into an even greater issue. And if you don't know what's going on, you are going to get caught by your board, by the police, by someone contacting you. God forbid it's someone with a microphone saying, why did you terminate this poor single mother with 6 children because of what they've heard the situation to be? Nobody wants to be blindsided by that. So you have to have all of these parts and pieces together ahead of time. And you have to look at your hot wash resolution at the end of the incident, say what do we need to improve, and then how are we going to maintain all of these plans and programs in a way that makes sense. As always, Firestorm asks that you predict, plan, and perform. We want you to understand the vulnerabilities, threats, and impacts, plan by developing policies, processes, and procedures, and then perform by implementing viable solutions, training, and testing your teams. That's how you build a comprehensive program. Now, next, welcome to January. Let's move into February. Join us for our February 2nd virtual exercise. We look forward to seeing you. But let's take a predict, plan, approach, plan, perform approach to this. So survey your senior leadership regarding your strategic risk concerns, where you see gaps. Update your risk vulnerability threat analysis, and conduct a security, both physical and technological assessment. And again, reach out to us, let us help you and make sure that you let us know that you are with a Georgia Independent School. For your planning phase, we need to align and help you align to best practices. And in your performance phase, request that Firestorm help you with that facilitated plan assessment and findings report. Please participate in our next Firestorm virtual exercise, and more important, analyze your current insurance coverage versus your current plans. As I mentioned, my Roxanne the Wonder Dog is whining in the background. As I mentioned, you can download this paper. It should be up, the brief should be up tomorrow, right about this same time. And we want to thank the Georgia Independent Schools Association for your continued support and your focus on creating safer and better environments for your teachers, your students, and your community, and yourself. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at firestorm.com. You can reach me or Bill Baker directly at webinars@firestorm.com. You can speak to the lovely but fascinating Bill Baker at the 1-800 number listed below. And until we speak next month, have a great month, have a great day, and this will end today's session. Thanks so much. Goodbye.